Welcome to True Crime Threads, where we unravel the shocking twists of real-life betrayals and tragic love stories. In this case, a love triangle turns deadly, leading to a shocking conclusion. Layla had always dreamed of a fairy tale romance. At 28, she thought she had finally found it with Ressler, a charming and successful lawyer who had swept her off her feet. Their relationship seemed like a dream, and their engagement was nothing short of magical. Ressler proposed during a winter getaway, dropping to one knee on a snowy mountaintop as the sun set behind them. The moment was picture perfect, and the glittering diamond ring he slid onto her finger seemed to symbolize their future together, bright, secure, and filled with love. Layla's social media exploded with congratulatory messages as friends and family marveled at the couple's love story. She dived into wedding planning with boundless excitement, choosing floral arrangements, venues, and dresses while imagining the life she and Ressler would build together. To outsiders, they were the epitome of a modern fairy tale, the kind of couple that others aspired to be. But as the weeks turned into months, subtle cracks began to appear in their relationship. Ressler, once attentive and devoted, began working unusually late hours. His phone was always buzzing with notifications, and when Layla asked about them, his responses were vague and dismissive. "Just work," he'd say with a quick smile, brushing off her concerns. Layla, eager to believe the best about the man she loved, reassured herself that his demanding career as a lawyer explained his distractions. Still, there were moments that gnawed at her. Ressler seemed more guarded than usual, frequently excusing himself to take calls in another room. His once loving gestures became sporadic, and the spark that had defined their relationship in its early days seemed to dim. Layla tried to push aside her doubts, blaming the stress of wedding planning and the pressures of his job for the growing distance between them. She wanted to believe that their love was as perfect as it appeared on the surface. One day, while cleaning out Ressler's car, she stumbled upon something that made her heart stop: a hotel receipt tucked into the glove compartment. It was dated for a night he had claimed to be working late. The blood drained from her face as questions flooded her mind. She quickly stuffed the receipt back into its hiding place, hoping against hope that it was some kind of misunderstanding. Unwilling to confront him just yet, Layla decided to ignore the gnawing suspicion, convincing herself that she was being paranoid. After all, Ressler was the man she planned to marry. How could she even begin to doubt him? Yet, deep down, the seeds of uncertainty had already been sown. Her picture-perfect engagement was beginning to feel like an illusion, and she was about to uncover the truth lurking beneath its polished exterior. Unbeknownst to Layla, Ressler had been carrying on a secret affair with Brooke, a co-worker at his law firm. Their connection had started innocently enough, with light-hearted banter during late nights at the office. Brooke was everything Layla wasn't: bold, daring, and unapologetically confident. She carried an air of mystery that Ressler found intoxicating, and before he knew it, their professional relationship blurred into something far more personal. What began as harmless flirtation escalated quickly. Shared drinks after work turned into stolen kisses, and soon Ressler and Brooke found themselves meeting in secret. Their relationship thrived in the shadows, fueled by the thrill of secrecy and the forbidden nature of their connection. Ressler told himself it was a temporary escape, a distraction from the pressures of his demanding career and impending marriage. But as time passed, he became more entangled in his feelings for Brooke, unable or perhaps unwilling to extricate himself. Brooke, however, had no intention of remaining a secret forever. What had started as a casual fling had grown into something deeper for her. She saw Ressler as more than a lover. She envisioned a future with him, one where she didn't have to hide in the shadows. But there was one obstacle standing in her way: Layla. Brooke began pressing Ressler to make a choice, insisting he leave his fiancé and commit to her fully. Ressler, caught between two worlds, found himself drowning in a web of lies. To Layla, he maintained the facade of a devoted fiancé, attending wedding planning meetings and posing for engagement photos. To Brooke, he made whispered promises of a future together, vowing to leave Layla when the timing was right. But in truth, Ressler was paralyzed by fear and indecision, unwilling to risk losing either woman. As Wrestler's double life became increasingly reckless, cracks began to show. He grew careless, leaving behind traces of his affair, texts left on his phone, unexplained absences, and slips of the tongue that Brooke noticed but Layla did not. Brooke's patience wore thin, and her demands grew louder. She wanted more than stolen moments and empty promises. Layla, still blissfully unaware of Wrestler's betrayal, remained focused on their future. She dismissed the occasional odd behavior as work-related stress or pre-wedding jitters. But the pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place, and it wouldn't be long before Layla stumbled upon the devastating truth. Wrestler's affair with Brooke was a ticking time bomb, and the consequences of his actions were closer than he realized. Layla's suspicions about Wrestler began to grow after finding the hotel receipt in his car, and her initial doubts gave way to a gnawing need for answers. She couldn't shake the unease that something wasn't right, and it soon consumed her thoughts. Determined to uncover the truth, she began to pay closer attention to Wrestler's behavior. The late nights, secretive phone calls, and guarded demeanor all pointed to something he wasn't telling her. One evening, while Wrestler was in the shower, Layla noticed his laptop sitting open on the dining table. It was a temptation too strong to resist. Her hands trembled as she opened his email account, and what she found confirmed her worst fears. Messages between Wrestler and someone named Brooke painted a vivid picture of betrayal. The emails were flirtatious and intimate, with exchanges about secret getaways and declarations of love. Attached to one of the messages was a photo of Brooke, her smile radiant, a stark contrast to the devastation Layla felt in that moment. Her heart pounded as she scrolled through the evidence, each message a dagger plunging deeper into her chest. She wanted to scream, cry, confront him, but instead, she closed the laptop and sat in silence, her mind racing. Confronting Wrestler would mean admitting she had snooped, and she wasn't ready for that. She needed more evidence, more clarity, before taking her next step. Layla began to follow Wrestler's movements closely. She noted the nights he claimed to be working late and started cross-referencing them with the details she had uncovered in his emails. It didn't take long for her to catch him in a lie. One Friday evening, he told her he had an important meeting with a client, but instead, she spotted him at a cozy restaurant with Brooke. From the safety of her car, she watched as the two laughed, shared a bottle of wine, and leaned into each other with an intimacy that shattered her illusions. The sight of them together was almost too much to bear, but Layla's shock quickly turned to anger. She took photos of their interaction, capturing the betrayal in vivid detail. This wasn't just about Wrestler cheating, it was about the life she had been planning, the trust she had placed in him, and the humiliation of being blindsided. Layla returned home that night with a newfound determination. Confrontation wasn't enough, she needed to expose Wrestler for what he truly was. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore, it was about justice. With her evidence in hand, Layla began to devise a plan to dismantle the illusion of their perfect relationship and make Wrestler face the consequences of his actions. Brooke's patience with Wrestler was wearing thin. What had initially felt like an exciting affair had turned into a source of frustration and resentment. She was tired of waiting in the shadows, tired of being the second choice. Wrestler had promised her a future, but as the weeks passed, it became clear he wasn't prepared to take the steps necessary to make that happen. Brooke began pressuring him more aggressively, demanding he leave Layla once and for all. Wrestler found himself cornered. Brooke's demands were growing louder, and her threats to expose their affair became harder to ignore. Yet, the idea of breaking things off with Layla terrified him. The fallout would be catastrophic. His reputation, his career, his relationships with family and friends were all on the line. Desperate to keep both worlds intact, Wrestler continued spinning his web of lies, telling Brooke that he needed more time while assuring Layla that nothing was wrong. Meanwhile, Layla's obsession with uncovering the truth had reached dangerous levels. She couldn't stop thinking about the betrayal, replaying every moment of their relationship in her mind and questioning how she had missed the signs. The images of Wrestler and Brooke together were burned into her memory, fueling her anger and resolve. Layla created a fake social media profile and began messaging Brooke under the guise of an anonymous source. The messages were carefully crafted to sow doubt and paranoia. She hinted at knowing about the affair and warned Brooke that Ressler was lying to her about his intentions. Layla's messages struck a nerve and Brooke became increasingly agitated. She began confronting Ressler about the anonymous messages, accusing him of playing both sides. Ressler, now caught between two volatile women, felt the walls closing in. Brooke's accusations grew more intense, and Layla's behavior became more erratic. Layla started dropping subtle hints in conversations with Ressler, testing his reactions and watching for signs of guilt. Ressler, overwhelmed and unable to think clearly, made a critical mistake. He agreed to meet both women separately to try to placate them. What Ressler didn't realize was that Layla had anticipated his moves. She found out about one of his planned meetings with Brooke and decided to intervene. Brooke, unaware of Layla's growing involvement, showed up to the meeting with Ressler expecting answers, only to find herself blindsided by the chaos that unfolded. The tension between the three had reached a boiling point. Each was consumed by their own motives, Layla by her thirst for revenge, Brooke by her desire for exclusivity, and Ressler by his desperation to escape unscathed. The encounter ended in a screaming match, with Brooke storming out and Layla vowing to make Ressler pay for his deceit. The love triangle had become a powder keg, and it was only a matter of time before it exploded. The situation spiraled out of control the night Brooke decided to confront Ressler directly at the apartment he shared with Layla. It was an unplanned, impulsive move fueled by her growing frustration and paranoia. Brooke was done waiting for Ressler to choose her, and she was ready to take matters into her own hands. Layla, who had been meticulously planning her revenge, was taken by surprise when Brooke showed up unannounced. She had been preparing to confront Ressler herself, but now the confrontation had arrived at her doorstep, escalating beyond anything she could have predicted. Brooke's arrival set off a chain reaction that would end in tragedy. The argument began almost immediately, with Brooke demanding answers from Ressler. Her voice was sharp, filled with anger and betrayal. She accused him of stringing her along, of lying about his intentions to leave Layla, and of wasting her time. Ressler, visibly panicked, tried to calm her down, but his attempts were weak and unconvincing. Layla watched the scene unfold, her fury building as she listened to Brooke's accusations and Ressler's feeble denials. The reality of his betrayal was laid bare before her, and any lingering doubts she had were obliterated. The man she thought she knew, the man she had planned her future with, was a liar and a coward. The situation grew more chaotic as Layla finally broke her silence. She confronted Ressler with everything she had discovered: the emails, the hotel receipts, the photos she had taken of him with Brooke. Her voice shook with anger as she exposed his lies, leaving him nowhere to hide. Ressler, cornered and desperate, tried to shift blame, but neither woman was willing to listen. As the argument escalated, Brooke's anger turned toward Layla. She accused her of being weak, of clinging to a man who clearly didn't love her. The insult was the breaking point for Layla, who lunged at Brooke in a blind rage. The two women struggled, their screams echoing through the apartment. In the midst of the chaos, a knife was grabbed from the kitchen counter. It wasn't clear who picked it up first, but the struggle turned deadly in an instant. When the police arrived, Brooke lay lifeless on the floor, a deep stab wound in her chest. Ressler was unconscious from a blow to the head, and Layla was sitting on the floor, her hands trembling as she held the bloodied knife. Layla claimed she acted in self-defense, stating that Brooke had attacked her first. But the evidence told a more complicated story. Investigators uncovered Layla's fake profile and messages to Brooke, painting a picture of premeditation. Ressler, once the object of both women's affections, became a key witness in the trial that followed, but his testimony did little to absolve him of responsibility. In the end, Layla was charged with Brooke's murder, her actions framed as a desperate act of vengeance. Ressler's reputation was destroyed, his career in ruins, and the tragedy served as a chilling reminder of how love, betrayal and obsession can unravel lives.